What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to another prospect breakdown right here on Pick Swap Media. Here I want to talk about one of the big men in this year's draft. He goes by the name of Yves Missi, most recently played for Baylor, the Cameroonian native, a guy with a monstrous frame, monstrous catch radius, and a pretty clear-cut direction for how his game will translate to the NBA level. He is a guy that is a rim-rolling, screen-setting, shot-blocking big man. There's a carbon copy of him around the NBA, and there is a high level of optimism for how his game will translate for that very reason. So in this video, I want to take a look at his stats as a whole, dive into some of his highlights, and talk about how I do believe he projects at the NBA level. So let's start by taking a look at his stats in his lone season, the one and done year at Baylor. Overall, started 32 of the 34 games, played just 22.9 minutes per game, so a little bit limited in that direction. In that time frame, he produced 10.7 points per game, 5.6 rebounds, 1.5 blocks per game, 2.4 fouls, shot the ball 61.4% from the field, did not attempt a three-pointer the entire season, also shot just 61.6% at the free throw line on 4.1 attempts per game, and as a whole attempted 6.7 shot attempts per game. That he was not a high usage player, one of the lower usage players that will be drafted in this entire draft. He's a guy that is going to be very dependent on who his point guard is and his relationship with him for how good he will be. If you pair him with a guy like a James Harden or a Trae Young or a Luka Doncic, who's excellent at maximizing the big man off the roll, punishing defenders depending on how they guard him, there is a world where Missy's able to make a day one impact on the NBA level. But if you get him in the wrong setting, I do think that his weaknesses will show pretty heavily. So let's take a look at his actual play on the floor as I talk through what some of those strengths and weaknesses are. The number one thing that is going to stand out is just his size, his catch radius, and frame. That he has over a 9-foot standing reach, and to get in some of the measurables specifically, 9'1.5" on the standing reach, a 7'2" wingspan, measures in a slightly below 7 foot, just underneath it. As I mentioned, a 7'2" wingspan, weighs 229 pounds. Good size on him. He moves well. He is 20 years old at this point in time. And as I mentioned, the number one thing is you can just clearly see how he will make an impact. You see him catching lobs. He goes up and gets that one. The catch radius is really massive. That he's very much cut from the Clint Capella type, archetype of player, although he can do plays like this, which make you think a little differently. We're going to watch this all the way from the inbounds. You see the anticipation, pokes it out, and you see how fluently he can move in transition there, slams it down. That is a level of size and athleticism that will still translate at the NBA level. I understand he doesn't look the most coordinated dribbling in the open floor, but it's going to be one in a rarity in which he has those type of opportunities. As I mentioned, that I do think he's going to be very dependent on who his point guard is for how effective he can be. And now shot blocking is the other direction, and there's an example of that right there. And what I particularly like about this is the way that he measures things. So you can see an advanced action, a little dribble handoff here. And let me freeze this one more time. So you can see that this is a double screen here, that they do the dribble handoff. And he does a really nice job in this position here. So obviously, our top man here beat off the screen. This is essentially the 2-on-1 that they look to create. And Missi does a nice job of sticking with the roller while still putting himself in a position to block the shot. So I'm going to take this one step further. And at this point, the guard is fully committed to going for it. Nice job getting back by the other Baylor defender. And it leaves Missi lined up just to absolutely send this back, which he does quite well there. So well done on the footwork, well done on the read and overall execution in that. I do believe in him as a shot blocking presence at the NBA level. And there's another example. This probably an even more impressive block here. I like this little guard going to the float game here. That was the right decision by him, but he still didn't put it up high enough. So nice acrobatic volleyball-like spike there. And you see the catch radius shining the exact same as a lob threat there. Those are going to be how he generates his offense. So when speaking about Yves Missi particularly, I'm not overly optimistic that this dude has worlds of talent to unpack. I don't think this is this raw, untouched guy that could grow into something special. But what I see is exactly who he is right now is still going to be a player that is effective at the NBA level. Look at how quickly he gets down the floor and is able to get this. This is right off the opening tip of this game. Wins the tip, gets down the floor, calls for it right away, and finishes. He does an excellent job of getting himself in the air and then orienting where the basket is. That, again, I keep saying the word catch radius, but it stands out every time I watch him. Now, these are the plays that I think are interesting. This is, I think, a little bit more to unpack here in the defensive side of things. In general, I want him picking off this pass. So we see he's putting pick and roll coverage once again here. The screener does a nice job rolling here, that he creates the advantage. I would like Yves to be able to step up and kind of pick this off here. And you can see that they tuck the pass through. I do like that he threw a kick out, but obviously did not get in the way here, but still had enough to make up with her. Despite the roller getting the pass and having a chance to basically get to his spot here, Missi still wins this battle because of his advantage from a size standpoint. There will be matchups in which he's unable to pull that off at the NBA level, absolutely. But I do like that he made up for the recovery, even though he probably should be a little bit more up in there. I do think that he's going to be a drop coverage guy for most of his NBA career, which does limit some extents. Rudy Gobert, particularly, is a guy that we saw be punished in this postseason, not being able to be flexible and guard in different sets. But we know that how elite he is at the things that he does do. I'm not saying Missi is Rudy Gobert, and I mean that from both the strengths and weaknesses there. The way I always describe Gobert is he's so elite in the things that he can do, but limited in what those things are. Missi, I think, has a chance to be a little more well-rounded than Gobert as a whole, certainly more athletic. I think a better functional mover than Gobert. And we see here, look at this, the little counter to the zone defense here. I really like this is an option that I still think is going to be here at the NBA level. So Oregon State clearly playing a zone here, look like a 3-2 at the top. And then they just separate a little back screen for it and put him in a place. You see him calling for it, pointing up, put it in a place where the defense cannot reach it. That is going to be stuff that translates at the NBA level. And I like that he went up strong on the second leap there. So what if you're looking for a rotational or starting center, that is Yves Missi. That is a guy that I do believe is excellent at things he can do, a low usage, a guy who likely should not dribble over the course of the game, but he can make an impact. Being a rim running guy that gets out on the break, is always a lob threat, is effective in pick and roll. I think there's more that can be developed out of his pick and roll game as well. One of the things that I really have noticed, particularly this postseason, has been so impactful is guys that can pass out of the short roll. So to give an example of this, and let me wait till I get the nice pick and roll opportunity. But what I mean by that is when the pass is slotted to them on the roll, that you can make a secondary decision where you're either kicking out to a three-pointer. Guys that are excellent at it. Bruce Brown has certainly made his impact on one of the guys that I think carved out this role. I think a guy like Draymond Green is particularly great at it. We've seen Derek Lively be very excellent at it this postseason. I do think that's a skill that's becoming more and more important at the NBA level. That's not something I see Missi particularly projecting. I think he's a guy that's going to have to constantly be the fifth option, not as a decision maker. That keeps the game simple. Now, the good part of that is I think he's pretty content to sit within that. Again, he did not attempt a single three-pointer this year. In fact, he attempted just one jump shot overall. That was not the shot selection. Now, I do praise the know your strengths, know your limitations, and that's something that, again, that's why we're talking about him as a potential pick, that he never fought out of his weight class or attempted to do things he was not capable of. But again, that does leave him a little bit limiting there. I also would like if the rebounding numbers were a bit better. Again, he played limited minutes per game, that if you want to put it on a per 40-minute scale, we're talking about 9.8 rebounds per game, which is a better number there, but still a little bit light. That this is a guy that should turn himself into a double-double machine and still has a little bit ways to go from the defending standpoint. Now, there were other guys that could rebound on this Baylor team, so that could be a part of it for sure, but I still would just like to see that I need to see a little bit more hunger out of the just wanting to be the number one guy that gets a rebound. He didn't necessarily make that impression for me. He wasn't a guy that when the shot goes up, I see the that's my ball instinct kick in him. And I would like to see that a little more. I do think that's a bit of a swing skill that I'm waiting on to see how that develops in his game. But ultimately, he does fit this category of sure thing in a draft where there's a ton of mystery, where so many of these prospects have huge question marks or you're unsure exactly what they will project as. Missi's a guy who you know exactly what you're getting. Donovan Klingon's another guy that I've been really complimentary for that same reason. I'm not saying Klingon definitely more skilled as a whole than Missi, but they're cut from a little bit from the same cloth of you know exactly what kind of their floor and ceiling are as a player, more so than a lot of players in this draft. And if it is the right setting, if it is a missing piece on your team, absolutely can be effective here. And I do want to highlight this play before we get going here. Look at this, and this is Kyle Filipowski driving on him. Filipowski, another guy that will hear his name likely in the first round. You see Missi kind of closing out with the threat of the shot. Filipowski gets to the spin move. That looks like it should be enough to beat him. It absolutely does. And Missi still with the recovery block here. That's a really nice play. That's one of the more impressive plays that I think he made on the season as a whole. So did want to make sure we highlighted that. But that is the final takeaways with Missi, is he's going to be a rim running, screen setting, shot blocking big man, that he's going to be exactly who he is. I don't think there's that much more to unpack, but if that's what you're missing on a team, you absolutely can get that with him in a selection in this year's draft. So I do think he ultimately sees his name called in the first round because of what a sure thing that he is, that there is not this doubt that a lot of these players in this draft class have. So I'm excited to see that with Missi. So let me know what you guys think in the comments, some of your comps or who you think he compares at. I do think Clint Capella is the obvious comparison that I will give to him. That's the model I think he should be fitting his game out of. And I think he can be quite impactful with that being the case. So let me know if you agree with that. If there are any other players that you have in mind regarding with that, as well as any other prospects that you want to see that breaking down before the draft kicks off. So appreciate you guys for tuning into this one. Make sure you are dropping a like button on this video, dropping your comments below, and subscribing to the channel. Appreciate each and every one of you once again, and talk to you next time right here on Pick Swap Media.